Hi, welcome to KwikTactiX. In this tutorial, I want to show you how layers work on the session planner. But first, I'll explain what layers are. When you place an item onto the canvas, it is added in the form of a layer. And there are three types of layers. These are markers, shapes, and text. So whenever you add an item onto the canvas, it's always added as the topmost layer. As an example, if you add an orange cone and a green cone to the canvas, then the green cone will show on top of the orange cone. And then if you draw a circle on the canvas, the circle will then appear on top of the orange and green cones. With each layer type, you can copy and paste, move and delete, and you can also move a selected layer to the top or bottom of the layer stack. When you select a marker layer on the canvas, you can do things like expand, shrink, mirror, and ghost. And you can also align and distribute, lock and unlock, group and ungroup, as well as rotate in 2D and 3D, depending on the type of marker you have selected. Finally, if you have any shapes or text selected, then you can change their colors as well. One last thing I have to mention. To work with layers, you always have to use the selector tool. Okay, let's create our test ground setup. Add 3 orange cones, and place them in a line. Then add 3 green cones, and place them in a line like we did with the orange cones. Now we're going to need 1 blue standard line. And finally, we need to add 1 white standard line onto the canvas just like I do. Okay, now we've got something on the canvas. Let's start by simply selecting a single layer. Click the selector tool and click the orange cone. You will notice that the layer you selected has a white box around it. And its functions you can change appear at the bottom of the session planner. Now deselect the cone by clicking anywhere on the canvas. When selecting multiple layers, you have 2 ways available. The first is to click a layer you want to initially select, then hold your Shift key in, and continue clicking the other layers you want to add. You will see, each layer you click gets added to the overall selection. If you select more than 1 layer, then the layers will flash. The next way to select multiple layers is probably the one you will use the most. Click anywhere on the canvas to deselect anything you have selected. Now create a box around the layers you want to select by clicking and holding your mouse in whilst dragging the cursor. Then let go of the mouse button to select the layers that are inside the box you created. You should notice them start flashing to indicate they are selected. If you place a box around a single layer only, then it will show its functions you can change. However, if you create a box around multiple layers, then you will not see the functions. All you can do with multiple layers selected is move, copy, delete, group or lock them. You can also use your arrow keys to move them as well. And if you only have shapes or text selected, you can change their colors by clicking the ink buttons at the bottom of the session planner. Now you know the different ways you can select layers and how to deselect them. Let's go ahead and look what we can do with the layers on the canvas. To copy and paste. First, highlight the layers you want to copy with the selector tool. When the layers are selected, you can either press the keyboard shortcut keys, Shift and C, or right-click the canvas and select Copy. Once copied, drag the selected layers out of the way, then click the canvas to deselect anything you have selected. Now let's paste the copied layers back onto the canvas. You can either use the keyboard shortcut keys by holding Shift and pressing V, or you can right-click the canvas and select Paste. When you paste a layer back onto the canvas, it is pasted into the exact position where it was copied. And you can also paste the layer into the same position on any slide. To delete layers, first, highlight the layers you want to delete with the selector tool. Once they are highlighted, right-click the canvas and select Delete, or press the keyboard Delete key. The layers you selected will now be deleted. If you delete a layer by accident, then you can use the Redo function to cancel the deletion. To use the Redo function, hold Shift and press Z on the keyboard. Or click Edit on the top menu, and select Undo Redo. This will cause the last action to be undone. Let's now have a quick look at moving layers around. Use the selector tool, and select some layers. You can use your mouse to move them, by pressing and holding the mouse button on any of the selected layers, then dragging your mouse around the canvas. You can also use your keyboard to move them as well. While the layers are still highlighted, press any of your arrow keys on the keyboard to slowly move the layers on the canvas. And when you hold your Shift key in, whilst using arrow keys, you will notice the layers move much faster. Deselect the layers by clicking anywhere on the canvas. Now I want to show you how to position layers on top of each other. As I mentioned earlier, when you add a layer onto the canvas, it is always positioned at the top of the layer stack. Which is fine in most cases, but there will be plenty of situations when you want a specific layer to show above or below another layer. The way we do this is by changing the position of the layer in the layer stack. Click the selector tool if it's not already highlighted. Now move the white line so it appears over a cone by dragging it with your mouse. The reason it shows above the cone is because the line layer was added after the cone was. However, we can change this easily by sending the line to the bottom of the layer stack, or we can bring the cone to the top. Both ways give the same results. To send the line to the bottom of the stack and appear under the cone, click the line if it's not already highlighted. Once selected, right-click the canvas, select layers and click Move to Bottom. This will make the line go to the bottom of the layer stack. And if we want to bring the line back above the cone, we right-click the canvas, select layers and click Move to Top. Once you get used to how layers are positioned in the stack, you'll be able to use layer positioning for many things, like creating line shadows, or placing goalkeepers in front or behind goals. You should now have a good idea how layers generally work, and how to manage them with the selector tool. Let's have a look at what we can do with marker layers. When we select marker layers, we have some additional features we can work with. We can align marker layers vertically or horizontally on the canvas. To align vertically, select the 3 orange cone layers. When they are highlighted, right-click the canvas and select Layer, then click Align Vertically. You should now see that the cones have aligned vertically. To align horizontally, you do exactly the same, but this time, choose Align Horizontal. Now let's look at the Align and Distribute feature. When we place markers onto the canvas, we can't always get them perfectly spaced out. This is where this cool feature comes in. When you select 2 or more marker layers, and use Align and Distribute, the layers between the first and last layers will be distributed evenly. Let's see this in action. Make sure nothing is selected, by clicking the canvas anywhere. Now select the 3 orange cones, by clicking first on the left cone, then holding Shift down, and clicking the other cones. The cone we selected first and last, will be the key markers, so anything we selected between these, will be aligned and distributed. Now right-click the canvas, select Layer, and click Align and Distribute. Notice how the cone in the middle is aligned and positioned between the 2 other cones. This feature will be really handy when creating your ground layouts, using cones, balls and poles. Now let's look at locking layers into position and unlocking them. As you get more and more familiar with the session planner, you will start creating more complex sessions. The more complex the session, the more marker layers you will place onto your canvas. With lots of layers on the canvas, it can be easy to accidentally move a marker layer out of position. This is where locking a layer, or locking a set of layers into position will come in handy. Because, once you lock a layer, it cannot be moved until you unlock it. Let's lock the cone into position, and then unlock it. Click the selector tool, if it's not already selected. Now select one of the orange cone markers. When it's highlighted, right-click the canvas, select Layer and click Lock Layers. Then click on the canvas once to deselect the cone. Let's try and move the layer now. Notice that a message pops up saying the layer is locked, and you cannot move it. Now let's unlock the layer and try and move it. Click the lock layer so it's highlighted. Now right-click the canvas, select Layer, and click Unlock Layers. You should now be able to move the layer like normal. Let's now look at grouping layers. There may be situations when you need to select a layer with another layer, or join layers together, like placing a marker layer under a player. Instead of having to drag a box around the 2 layers, you can use the group feature. So when you click on a grouped layer, all the layers in the group will be selected. As a result, you can copy or move them as a single layer. Let's go ahead and group some layers. First, use the locator slider on menu 1, and drag the red circle target marker onto the canvas. Then drag any player marker on top of the target marker, like I do. Now click the selector tool, and make a box around both layers we just added. Right-click the canvas, select Layer and click Group Layers. Then click anywhere on the canvas to deselect any layers. Now when you click on either the player marker or the target marker, notice that both layers get selected. Now drag the player marker to another location. Notice that the red target marker moves with the player marker. Let's go ahead and ungroup the layers. Click the layer that contains the player marker, you'll see the target marker gets selected as well. Now right-click the canvas, select layer and click Ungroup Layers. Click the canvas anywhere to deselect any layers you might have highlighted. Then click the player marker we just ungrouped. Notice that just the player marker gets selected now. You have successfully grouped and ungrouped the markers. Finally, let's change the color of the shape layers. Using the selector tool, select both lines we added to the canvas. When they are highlighted, click any of the ink buttons at the bottom of the session planner. Notice that the line's color change. Also notice that shape layers do not have a white selection box around them. Instead, you see the position handles, which you can use to alter the layers. That's it, you should now have a good understanding about how layers work on the canvas.